This is the regularly scheduled Board of Adjustment meeting for the city of Waterloo for June 24th. And with me are my fellow commissioners. Tom, introduce yourself, please.
Tom Powers on the board.
Vice Chair John Beckman.
And I'm Jerry Thornsberry. So we have 5 decision items to go through tonight, and calling this meeting to order, have you looked at the agenda? Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a working agenda. Okay, now we have the May 27th meeting minutes, and I have just one little correction. On page 4, and the decision item, the first one, the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th paragraph, the word is insure with an E, not with an I. Insure to make,
Last sentence.
huh?
Basically the last sentence.
Yeah, the
on that
last
page,
sentence, yeah. To make certain. All right, any other corrections? May I have a motion to approve the corrected agenda, minutes?
I'll move the minutes as presented, or with the correction.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, decision items. Our first one is a request by Malcolm Cloak for variances to a rear yard and side yard setbacks to allow for a 3-foot rear yard setback and a 3-foot side yard setback, 32 feet less than the 35 feet required in the rear yard and 2 feet less than the 5 feet required in the side yard in the C2 Commercial District located at 2625 Falls Avenue. Staff report, please.
This is Tamala with staff. The applicant is requesting approval of a 3-foot rear yard and side yard setback, 32 feet less than the 35 required in the rear yard and 2 feet less than the 5 foot required in the side yard in the C2 commercial district to allow for an addition to the existing commercial building. The property is located at the intersection of Falls Avenue and Thorndale Avenue. The property is zoned C2 commercial district and has been zoned as such since 1969. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on the area as the property in question is adjacent to 1717 Falls Avenue, which has similar setbacks that do not meet minimum requirements, along with this area having mixed industrial uses. Properties in the immediate vicinity are zoned C2 commercial district as well. The proposed request would not be in conformance with the classification of this area as mixed commercial, medium to high density residential, professional offices, neighborhood commercial on the future land use map within the City of Waterloo Comprehensive Plan adopted on August 21st, 2023. The site in question would need to be rezoned C2CZ Commercial District to allow for a wholesale operation. The applicant plans to expand the building currently used for an accounting firm by building an addition to the rear and side yard to operate an aquaculture shrimp farming nursery for wholesale purposes. Therefore, the applicant is requesting approval of a 3-foot rear yard setback and a 3-foot side yard setback, 32 feet less than the 35 required in the rear yard and 2 feet less than the 5 feet required in the side yard in the C2 commercial district. According to the site plan, the building addition would be to the south and east of the building in question and will be used as a nursery for shrimp farming. The expansion will reduce the setback, but it would not have a negative impact on the character of the area as the property to the west of the site in question at 1717 Falls Avenue is at 0 lot line, along with 2501 Falls Avenue, which is 0.1 miles to the east of the site in question, was granted a variance for a rear and side yard setback on June 27, 2006. Since this proposed building addition would be a wholesale business, the site in question would need to be rezoned to C2CZ Commercial Conditional District to allow for wholesale because it is an industrial use. Lack of reasonable return. There would not appear to be a lack of reasonable return to the request. The applicant would continue to operate the current business as they are now. uniqueness. There would appear to be a uniqueness to this request since the building addition would have a greater rear yard setback than the adjacent property to the west. Public considerations. Approval of the variance would not appear to have a negative impact on the commercial area. There has been no opposition to the request. Therefore, staff recommends that the request by Malcolm Cleope for variances to the rear yard and side yard setbacks to allow for a 3-foot rear yard setback and a 3-foot side yard setback, 32 feet less than the 35 feet required in the rear yard and 2 feet less than the 5 feet required in the side yard in the C2 commercial district located at 2625 Falls Avenue be approved for the following reasons. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on traffic conditions in the area. There would appear to be a uniqueness to this request since the building addition would have a greater rear and side yard setback than the adjacent property to the west. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Yes.
Mr. Beckman?
How do we go about rezoning to C2CZ?
That is currently on the agenda for the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So it will go to Planning and Zoning on July 8th and then to City Council.
So does that need to happen before?
You can add a condition that it needs to be
Subject to-
rezoned, subject to the rezoning.
Okay. So, I mean, once it passes through us, it still has to meet that hurdle.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
This is Schrader with staff, so he's proposing an addition to the building which needs a variance to the setback. He's proposing a use in that building that would not be permitted without the rezone. They are two separate issues, so I don't know if he may not have an interest in the addition if the rezone isn't allowed, but you know, the addition and the setbacks, you know, and the variance needed from that are a separate issue from the use and the rezone needed from that. You know, I'm okay if you add that condition, but in theory, he could propose the addition, you know, regardless on the rezone and put a different use in there that does comply with.
Okay, but
The
B
zone.
can happen before A.
Yes,
Okay.
because they're
Right.
not exactly related.
But should it, process-wise?
Because they're, I mean, one's a setback variance and the other's a use issue. He is, you know, the applicant, and if the applicant's here, he can get up and address this as well, but he has indicated that the proposed use of the addition would be X, you know, which needs the rezone, but that's not to say he couldn't still propose the addition and, you know, even if he didn't get a rezone and put something in there that would be a permitted use.
No, for sure, I don't want to overcomplicate it. I think for me, in my brain, process-wise, I'm just thinking, though, working with the information that I have, I can't ignore the fact that I know what the intended use is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so for me, it makes sense to, if we know that's the case, do A first, logically, and then we can worry about B. But that's just my brain when it comes to the process.
I would agree with that, just from the standpoint of maybe falsely encouraging planning and zoning to go ahead and move forward without knowing that we're gonna already do this.
Is this common, Eric, for a B before A?
So it doesn't probably come up all that often, and because a use and a setback are two different things. There isn't anything that specifically says one has to come before the other, and you know, ultimately, if he gets the variance and doesn't get the rezone, it's going to be up to him if he builds the addition and puts something in there that meets the use or decides to not move forward with the addition. Or alternatively, you know, you could add the condition that limits it subject to that, and then if the rezone wouldn't go through, I suppose he would have to come back if he still wants to do a use that doesn't need a rezone, if you would put that condition on it. Might be best to see if the applicant's here to kind of
Sure.
discuss that.
Yeah, real quickly, refresh my memory. I'm looking, I don't know whether it shows up in our, well, it does, at the bottom of what would be page 13, the photograph?
With Falls Avenue at the top there, handwritten?
Yes,
Yeah.
right. There's that container at the very bottom of this picture. Refresh my memory on that. Was there?
They got an 18-month variance from, you guys gave them an 18-month variance. And I think I sent out a letter in August that their variance is up in September. I have to double check the dates, but yeah, it's coming up in the next couple months that their variance is expiring.
It has to be out of there.
Correct.
Okay. Appreciated that stays on your radar.
Oh, yeah, it's there, and in fact, that's one thing I noted when we went by the place was the fact that it was still there.
Okay. And I also noticed that on page 11, there's all these vehicles parked on Thorndale from RPM Motors. What's the deal with that? Is there a car lot there or something? I know we're getting off the subject a little bit, but it was just,
Is that the same property with the
The container, yeah.
container? Yeah, I believe they do run a car sales business.
okay, all right, okay.
Because it's related to the one across the street, I believe.
Canada, the old Motors, Canada Motors.
Something like,
I think it's considered a satellite lot, so I think the cars are fine, and we gave them the temporary variance for the
Container,
container.
okay, thank you.
All right, any more questions for staff? All right, is the applicant in the audience? Anyone else would like to speak in favor of this application? Anyone who would like to speak against this application? Okay, I just,
Applicant isn't here. Okay.
okay, so I have I wanted to respond to what you said, Mr. Powers, that it seems like with the authority that we have as a Board of Adjustment, if we put it subject to, I don't know how that would influence the P and Z. Yeah, I don't,
I don't know who's on P and Z.
yeah,
I don't know what kind of influence they take.
okay. All right, well, please.
Since the applicant's not here, perhaps staff knows this. I was curious, if you look, there's two different phases for this project, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Any idea what the timeline is on those phases?
This is Tamala with staff. He didn't specify exact time frame. He wasn't planning on going through BOA first and then P and Z. He thought he would just need to pull a permit. So based on our previous conversations, it's kind of as soon as possible. Start it once he gets the approvals from BOA and P and Z.
Okay.
All right, other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Gentlemen? You okay with moving ahead, or you want to
Table it? Or?
table it?
Well, with them not being here, I would move that we table this till next meeting. Because you're not sure that they want to move forward immediately, right? Or are you?
Yeah, they didn't specify a specific time frame. They did mention that since it is an accounting firm, he wanted to do this business as when tax season isn't taking up his time. He has a lot of time, so based on that conversation, it seems like he wants to get it started as soon as possible, and get that running as a fully functioning business, and then whenever tax season hits again, go back and do that. But it seems like his priority is to get this started as soon as possible.
and since this is going through the rezone anyway, I mean, the rezone's not going to be heard until July 8th. That's 2 weeks before the next Board of Adjustment meeting. So I doubt the public hearing for the rezone will be at City Council before then. So I don't think you're delaying him any by tabling it.
I'm a little disappointed they didn't show up. This is his project, so let's have him here.
I think questions and for me, some questions and clarity would be helpful on around timeline. I think also for a board like the process in which we do this is helpful for me. I think being new, taking this step before going through planning and zoning doesn't quite make the
Well,
logical progression. I understand, right, that you can do B without A necessarily, but I think some clarity as to if planning and zoning makes a different decision, then what's the intended use of the building?
well, what happened was when he requested the variance, so we were proceeding with that, and then when it came up what his use was, we kind of looked at exactly where it would fall, and and once we looked at it, we made the decision that it would not be a regular C2 use, and so that's when we made determine he had to go into rezoning. So yeah, the variance came up first. He was already applied for that, and it was doing the research of the project that we made. I mean, as staff, we made the decision to say that he's going to need a rezone.
Okay. So I think it's maybe a good opportunity to follow up with the applicant, have some conversations about what the whole picture, get a better idea of maybe the timeline, what the plan would be, maybe some contingencies even to give the individual a heads up. If planning and zoning doesn't make a decision that's preferential, then maybe you have a plan B in mind that can, fall within the regulations as they are standing. So I'm okay tabling it, maybe giving the applicant an opportunity to be here and answer some questions and have further conversation with the board.
So is that a second?
That's a second.
All right. Moved by Powers to table to the next meeting and seconded by Mr. Smith. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. This application is tabled. All right. Request number 2 is made by Henry and Kathy Ford for a variance to allow a 6-foot-tall privacy fence in the required front yard in the R2 1 and 2 family residence district located at 122 Cutler Street. Staff report, please.
To start off with staff, the applicant's requesting a variance to allow for a 6-foot-tall privacy fence along the front yard of 122 Cutler Street, which is addressed on the long dimension side of a corner lot. The property is located at the southeast corner of Cutler and Dawson Street, with the home being addressed on the long dimension on a corner lot. The home is zoned R2 1 and 2 family residence district, zone as such since the adoption of the zoning ordinance in 1969, and is surrounded by other residences with the same zoning. Section of zoning ordinance pertains to this request chapter 25, 10-5-1C fences on corner lots and/or addressed and/or facing long dimension street frontage. No such fence shall exceed 4 feet in height in the front yard, nor exceed 8 feet in the rear yard along the street side adjoining the rear yard. Setback from the street, minimum of setback between the house and the street. A fence along the street adjoining the rear yard extending closer to the street than the setback between the house and the street shall not exceed 4 feet in height, except that in the rear yard of the property in question is abutting the rear yard of an adjoining corner lot. No such fence shall exceed 8 feet in height in the rear yard and alongside and along the street side adjoining the rear yard, extending the rear of the house to the front lot line and back to the rear of the lot. Applicants are requesting to install a 6-foot privacy fence in the required front yard in a home that is addressed along the long dimension street frontage. If the home was addressed along the short dimension street frontage, the fence they are proposing would be legal. And it should be noted that the home used to be addressed off the narrow dimension street frontage. Lack of reasonable return. There does not appear to be a lack of reasonable return, as the applicant could put up a fence that would meet the requirements of zoning ordinance. Uniqueness, there would appear to be uniqueness as they could install a fence if the home was addressed off the narrow dimension street frontage and the home used to be addressed as such. Public consideration, staff has heard no opposition to the request. The request would not appear to alter the essential character of the surrounding area. One thing to note on this is there's a slight modification they will have to do to their fence to meet the triangle visibility. It's only 3 feet, but they're going to line it up with the edge of the garage, and so it's slightly, and I did send this to the applicant last week. So there's just a slight area where they're gonna have to make a little change into the fence, but it's minor. It's just for visibility for people walking on the sidewalk. Therefore, staff recommends that the request by Henry and Kathy Ford for a variance to allow for a 6-foot tall privacy fence in the required front yard in the R2 102 family residence district located at 122 Cutler Street be approved for the following reasons. The property in question is unique because the home was formerly addressed on the narrow dimension lot line, and the request would not appear to affect the neighborhoods. The fence would be legal if the home was addressed on Dawson Street. And just another note that the adjoining lot to the south is also a corner lot, except for the fact it's separated by an alley, so it's not considered adjacent, so it would be legal then too. So,
So the fence is gonna run clear down here. So
well,
it'd be in
this is where they want to run the fence and then along here.
Okay.
And it's just that tiny corner that they're gonna have to cut off the fence.
so it's really just a post.
Yeah, exactly. It's just really minor.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Why was this address changed from the narrow dimension?
Looks like a remodel.
Yeah, it was remodeled at one point, and I wasn't sure if the applicant's here, they can answer that, because it's been an extended period of time, so.
Okay. Okay.
Is Kathy or Henry Ford here? Kathy, please step forward and say your name and your address for the record.
I'm Kathy Ford from 122 Cutler Street, formerly Kathy Ford from 127 Dawson Street. We requested the address change because we had pizza delivery people. Delivery people could never find our house because we had a goofy 127 written on the side. We don't know, I don't know if it was just zoned to be built differently or if when they remodeled in the 70s, they changed it. I have never had that information, but we requested the address change just for convenience.
Okay.
Sense.
Yeah.
Hold, not done.
Sure, sure.
On page 20 of our packet is an aerial picture of the property. And there is a blue line that looks like it goes around the perimeter of this property. Is that blue line representative of the fence that you want?
No, not exactly.
The black line, they drew it in there. You can see
Sorry,
it.
I was drawing a little badly.
Okay,
Can you see it, John?
okay, okay, yes, all right.
Okay.
So it doesn't, one of my other questions is this fence line does not run in front of the garage door.
No.
No,
Well,
it run-
not the main garage door, no, just the, we'll be able to enter it from there.
Got it, understood. Okay. I also. Okay. I also noticed that there's 2 cars backed up to that garage door
That's correct.
that are on the public sidewalk. They're
I'll make sure they're moved off. Those aren't the same 2 cars, those cars aren't there anymore. But
As
there
of-
are 2 cars there. And I will make sure that they're off the sidewalk if that's the case. I hadn't looked and I can't say that.
They were
You're wrong.
there Sunday.
Yeah, then they're probably still there. They haven't been moved since
They were
Sunday.
there even when I went by today again.
Okay. Can't have them there.
I'll move them.
Okay.
We'll get them moved.
All right. Okay. That's it.
Any other questions of Mrs. Ford? No? All right. May I have a motion?
Where is it? Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the request by Henry and Kathy Ford for a variance to allow for a 6-foot tall privacy fence in the required front yard in the R2 1 and 2 family residence district located at 122 Cutler Street for the following reasons. Number one, the property in question is unique because the home was formerly addressed on the narrow dimension lot line. Number two, the request would not appear to affect the neighborhood as the fence would be legal if the home was addressed on Dawson Street.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. You have your fence. You bet. All right. Our decision item number 3 is a request by Iowa Heartland Habitat for Humanity for a variance to the minimum required lot size to allow for 3 lots of 5,600 square feet, each being 400 square feet less than the 6,000 square feet required, and a variance to the minimum lot width to allow for 3 lots of 40 feet of width, each being 10 feet less than the 50 feet required for the construction of 3 single-family homes in the R3 Multiple Residence District and C2 Commercial District located at 512 Almond Street. Staff?
Madam Chair, before,
Yes.
if you'll read that paragraph, I mean, you don't read it out loud, but it appears as though we're going to be dealing with the same issue on this one as we did with number 1.
That is just for planning and zoning departments. We don't want a lots with 2 zoning districts in it. So that's just, Habitat's given us the permission to rezone it.
Okay.
So it's more for our
Okay,
cleaning up.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't affect the,
Thank you.
Yep.
Continue.
That's good. All right.
so the applicant is requesting a variance to the average lot size and a minimum lot width in order to construct 3 single-family homes. Currently, there are 2 lots that the applicant's planning to split into 3. Currently, the lot addressed as 52 Walman Street is zoned C2 Commercial District, and the one to the west is zoned R3 Multiple Residence District, and they have been zoned as such since the adoption of the zoning ordinance in 1969. 512 Walman used to be a commercial building until it was abandoned, and the city of Waterloo will be demolishing the building in the future. The request is not anticipated to have a negative impact on the neighborhood, and in fact will continue the revitalization of the neighborhood that has occurred over the last 5 years. The section of zoning ordinance that pertains to this request, Chapter 10, R3 Multiple Residence District, 10-10-3 minimum lot size and lot width. Requirements for the C2 Commercial District is the same as the R4 Multiple Residence District, which is also the same as the R3. The applicants are requesting the variance to a lot size to allow for 3 5,600 square foot lots, 400 feet less than required, and a variance to allow for 40 foot wide lots, 10 feet less than required. However, it should be noted that these lots are located in the Walnut Historic Neighborhood, and there are many lots in the area as small as 3,000 square feet and only 30 feet wide. Criteria, the lack of reasonable return, there would appear to be a lack of reasonable return as the applicant would be able to build 2 homes instead of 3. Uniqueness, there would appear to be uniqueness to the request as their proposed home sites are located within the Walnut Historic Neighborhood, and there is many lots in the area, even smaller and narrower than was being proposed for this location. Public consideration, staff has heard no opposition to the request. Request would not appear to alter the character of the surrounding area. Therefore, staff recommends that the request for Iowa Heartland Habitat for Humanity for variance to the minimum required lot size for 3 lots of 5,600 square feet, 400 feet less than the 6,000 square feet required, and a variance to the minimum lot width to allow for 3 lots of 40 feet wide, 10 feet less than the 50 feet required for construction of 3 single-family homes in the R3 Multiple Residence District and C2 Commercial District located at 512 Almond Street be approved for the following reasons. There would appear to be a lack of reasonable return as the applicant would only be able to build 2 homes instead of 3 if the variance were not approved. And there would appear to be uniqueness to the properties as the properties are located in the Walnut Historic Neighborhood, which has many small, narrow lots.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Just to verify, these lots will go all the way back to the alley. They'll be narrower but quite long.
Right, exactly.
Okay. And there are garages included in these properties?
Most Habitat homes do include garages, so I do believe they're in the,
Okay.
I don't have a packet with me.
I didn't notice.
Yep, I mean, the ones I've seen they've done in Walnut include garages, so.
Okay.
And then, I'm sorry, I have a question on, when is the city gonna tear that building down? Because I noticed yesterday that there are,
Well, let the guy who's in charge of doing those.
the building materials laying in the yard next to it, so.
Eric Schrader, city planner. So the city of Waterloo is out for bid right now on a couple of properties, one of which includes this one. And I have been in communication with Habitat about the building material. It's temporarily there. So once the demo contractor actually would get on site, which, could be, maybe a month out or so, just depends on the timing. It is anticipated that material will be moved, and Habitat hopes to be building on one of the houses already by then, but there's plenty of room in there that we think we can get the one demoed while they're getting one built.
Okay. I have faith.
Any other questions for staff? Yes, please.
Oh, I guess maybe more for the applicant and staff.
Yep. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to speak about this request? Come forward and state your name and address, please.
Yeah, Andy Conger with Habitat. We're located at 803 West 5th Street.
So when I'm reading through this, Andy, thanks for coming here. Awesome. I'm really excited for what Habitat is doing in the community, but curious, so in the packet, it notes that there are 627 square feet, I'm assuming per level, so just over 1,800 square feet per home. I guess my question is with the lot size specifically, understanding that the lots will be pretty narrow.
Yeah.
We talk about lack of reasonable return. I think from Habitat's perspective, how significant is the loss, given their agreement with the city, the MOU with the city, and the loss between building 2 homes versus 3 homes? From Habitat's perspective, like how do you quantify that loss?
Yeah, a couple things. So I think as you mentioned, kind of it's very similar to other houses on Alma Street. So the 40-foot wide would actually be very characteristic of the other houses. So for aesthetics, it would kind of blend in and look more original in our opinion. But also we know working adjacent to downtown density is kind of a huge goal. So the more times we can fit 3 instead of 2, it actually helps kind of the downtown efforts as well, if that answered the question.
Yeah, a little bit. I was curious if Habitat's had any studies long-term about what that means for resale of the properties.
As of now, we haven't really felt much of a issue selling properties that are in that 40-foot kind of width. It's pretty common. We had 3 on Clay Street that were very similar.
Thank you.
Please.
So I guess I want to follow up, Roz. So initial sale is one thing. When the property comes for sale again, I think that was where you were headed with that question. Is that?
I don't think we've done like in-depth study, but I know we've had a handful of houses that have been resold in that neighborhood, and I don't think it was detrimental to the sale based on lot size. The most recent one was at 419 Almond. Looking back at recent history, it was a remodel we had done and then sold it, but it didn't appear to have impact on the size of it. Okay. And hopefully with the depth of lot and a detached garage on the back would not detract from that.
And I guess to dovetail on that, there will be garages on all 3 of these properties.
Yes, sir. Every house we build will always have at least a single stall attached or detached.
Okay.
Good. Other questions?
Just a minor question, but over like in the Edison area, which aren't your projects, but the air conditioning units are just right next to each other and next to the next home. So I'm curious, where would the units be placed at on these for noise purposes for the next door neighbor?
Yeah, typically when we're on narrow lots, our HVAC contractor puts them on the back of the house.
Okay, all right, but it's not on the Edison one, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, may I have a motion? Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the request by Iowa Heartland Habitat for Humanity for a variance to the minimum required lot size to allow for 3 lots of 5,600 square feet, 400 square feet less than the 6,000 square feet required, and a variance to the minimum lot width to allow for 3 lots of 40 feet of width, 10 feet less than the 50 feet required for the construction of 3 single-family homes in R3 Multiple Residence District and C2 Commercial District located at 512 Almond Street for the following reasons. Number one, there would appear to be a lack of reasonable return as the applicant would only be able to build 2 homes instead of 3 if the variance were not approved. And number two, there would appear to be uniqueness as the properties are located in the Walnut Historic Neighborhood, which has many small and narrow lots.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Alrighty, number 3, request number 3 is from Odell Salas for a variance to the front yard setback requirement to allow for a single-family home with a front yard setback of 16 feet. Oh, and 6.5 inches, 3 feet and 5.5 inches less than the 20 feet required to allow for the construction of 2 single-family homes in the R2 1 and 2 family residence district located south of 114 Wanacre Street. Staff report, please.
This is Galman with staff. So the applicant is requesting a variance to allow for a home to be built closer to the front lot line than the minimum front yard setback. Property is located south of 114 Warneka Street and is zoned R2 1 and 2 family residence district. It has been zoned as such since the adoption of the zoning ordinance. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on the neighborhood as it would allow for 2 new homes to be built in a residentially zoned area. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on traffic conditions in the surrounding area. The property in question is designated as industrial on the future land use map within the City of Waterloo Comprehensive Plan adopted August 21, 2023. However, the comprehensive plan is designed to be a guide and not a blueprint for overall development and planning of the community, and the site is zoned for residential. The section of the zoning ordinance that pertains to this request is Chapter 5, General Regulations 10-5-1E, Accessory Structures. The applicant are requesting a variance to the front yard setback for one of the houses that they will be building on that property. They are in the process of splitting the lot into 2, so the houses will be on separate lots. There are 3 lot of records on one parcel, on the one parcel shown on the map in the packet. Because there are lots of record, they are able to split the parcel into 2 buildable lots. 2 homes are planned on being built. Only the house to the north requires a variance to the front yard setback because that building is slightly larger than the house that will be built on the corner. The houses will be below the 35% maximum lot coverage. The alley behind the lot allows the buildings to meet the minimum rear yard setbacks. Criteria: 1, lack of reasonable return. There would appear to be a lack of reasonable return as the applicant would have to make the house smaller to be able to fit on the lot. 2, uniqueness. There would appear to be a uniqueness to the request as the lot is only 87 feet deep, with other lots within a quarter mile being between 90 feet to 140 feet deep. 3, public considerations. Approval of the variance would not appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area, and staff is not aware of any opposition to the request. Therefore, staff recommends that the request by Odell Salas for a variance to the front yard setback requirement to allow for a single-family home with a front yard setback of 16 feet, 6.5 inches, 3 feet, 5.5 inches less than the 20 feet required, to allow for the construction of 2 single-family homes in the R2 1 and 2 family residence district located south of 114 Warneka Street, be approved for the following reasons. One, the variance will allow 2 new homes to be built. 2, the request would not appear to have a negative impact on the neighborhood, and the home will not appear out of character with the neighborhood.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
Are garages required on this?
Yes, garages are required. They are on their side, on their building plans. They're attached garages. They do meet the minimum size that we require.
Okay. And the lot would only go, there's on Blackhawk County real estate mapping, it shows lines that indicate an alley, but there's really no alley that's running back.
Yeah,
through
so
there
it's
right now,
it's
right?
not an active alley. It's what we would call a paper alley. So it's still an alley by definition, but it's not actively being used.
But the lot ends at the alley.
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Yes, please.
I have a question for staff, and maybe this is just for my learning. When we say lack of reasonable return, how do we quantify that? Like, what is our level of significance? And so in this circumstance, I'm saying that there would be lack of reasonable return as the applicant would have to make the house smaller to be able to fit on the lot. The size between the homes is not significant, right? The size wouldn't be significantly smaller. And so I guess, how do we define that?
Mr. Schrader with staff, the lack of reasonable return is a very difficult standard, and we'll be looking at that based on the recent state law change and amending the zoning ordinance to be in compliance with that, since the new standard for most variances is going to be kind of that unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty, excuse me, instead of the unnecessary hardship. But in the meantime, yeah, based on how the ordinance is worded currently, we have that lack of reasonable return, but there is no definition of that, so it is certainly kind of subjective on how you determine whether or not denying a variance would deny a reasonable return or reasonable use of the property.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be the kid who's always getting, right, like the milk all over the classroom floor, but I feel like I want to operate with like a similar body of knowledge for like the board and understanding what that means. And like I'm fully like to have a lot of experience with the like the clear waters of the muddy state policies when it comes to some of this stuff. But like, I don't know. I want to make an informed decision. And so when we say that there would be lack of reasonable return, but I look at the differences between the home sizes, we're talking about some areas, right? We're talking about an inch or a foot. Some areas we're talking about 2 feet. We're talking about a setback that's 3.5 feet difference for a variance. And so I'm like, okay, is there a lack of reasonable return? Is it really significant for us to have to prove a variance, or is it just a preference?
Right.
Right. And I don't know how the new state policy would impact that. Maybe it would just say we can't inconvenience the homeowner or the applicant, right? But in this circumstance, I'm not really sure.
Would it be more of a practical difficulty under the new terms,
Exactly.
which is passed but technically not effective until July 1?
Exactly, right. So, and I don't want to try to make it muddier, but for me, it's one of those things where it's like, we say 20 feet. We're talking about 3.5 foot difference. If we can,
Square footage.
right? So I feel like it's minimal. I feel like the ask is minimal for the state, for the city standard and regulation, but I'm done being the squeaky wheel. I just need to learn a little bit. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions for staff?
I think it's good use.
Real quick clarification, that this variance only applies to the house which would be directly south of 114 Warnica.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there someone in the audience that'd like to speak in favor of this application?
Yes.
State your name and your address, please.
Dale Salas, 2613 Idaho.
All right. Questions for the applicant?
Hey, Mr. Salas. Yeah, curious. I was curious as to if like the home size, so looking at the form that's provided to us, one says like Chris Gable, one says Blaine Gable.
Correct.
the Chris Gable is a property that looks like it's gonna be slightly larger, potentially?
It's about 400 square feet larger.
Is that intentionally, or is that just to fit the
No, that's intentional. That's the design.
this design? Okay, so they wanted the home just be a little bit bigger. It wasn't to fit like the plot or anything like that.
No, no,
Okay.
that's the specific design for that particular lot, for that particular property. And it carries a big difference in terms of value.
Okay.
Yeah.
Staying with this diagram that's on page 48 in our packet, the garages,
If you were to look at it, the L part that stands out, that's where the garages will be.
Okay.
They're attached garages.
got it, thank you.
Okay. So that's where you gain that additional 400 square feet would be in the garage?
Well, yes and no. One garage is larger than the other, but there's more square footage in the main floor also.
For sure. Well, that would make sense to me then when it comes to lack of reasonable return on the square footage. That would make sense then for me. Okay.
Other questions?
I don't. I like the idea of it.
Great. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Anyone in the audience that would like to speak in opposition to this application? All right, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
All right, Madam Chair, I would, let me see here. Oh, I've got to find where I'm at now.
Page 46.
Madam Chair, I would recommend that the request by Odell Salas for variance to the front yard setback requirement to allow for a single-family home with a front yard setback of 16 feet, 6.5 inches, 3 feet, 5.5 inches, less than the 20 feet requirement to allow for the construction of two-family homes in the R2, 1 and 2 family residence district located at 114 Warrinka Street be approved for the following reasons. The variance will allow for 2 new homes to be built. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on the neighborhood, and the home will not appear to be out of character for the neighborhood.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right. Number 4, the request by Greenfield Investment LLC for a variance to allow for the demolition of an accessory structure without a replacement structure in the R4 Multiple Residence District located at 918 and 920 West 4th Street. Staff report.
This is Gauman with staff. So the applicant is requesting a variance to allow for the demolition of a garage without replacing the structure. The property is located at 1918-1920 West 4th Street and is zoned R4 Multiple Residence District and has been zoned as such since the adoption of the zoning ordinance. The request would appear to have a negative impact on the neighborhood, as there would be a 2-unit house without a garage, which would lead to cars being parked in the open on the lot. The request would not appear to have a negative impact on traffic conditions in the surrounding area. The request would appear to conform with the classification of the area as mixed residential on the future land use map. The section of the zoning ordinance that pertains to this request is Chapter 5, General Regulations 10-5-1E, Accessory Structures. The applicants are requesting a variance to not have to rebuild a demolished garage. The applicant has already demolished the accessory structure on the site without receiving a permit. Per zoning regulations, all existing homes with accessory structures cannot alter the structure that would cause them to have less than the minimum size garage or increase existing nonconformance unless ordered to demolish the structure after it had been deemed unsafe by the building official. The planning department only signs off on the demolition of a garage if the permittee has received a letter stating that the structure is unsafe and must be torn down, or if they have a building permit for a new garage to replace the old one. This applicant received neither of these, so they are seeking a variance to the accessory structure requirements to obtain the demolition permit without being required to build a new garage. The applicants have indicated that the previous garage was in poor condition, but did not have a letter from the building official. Because the dwelling on the property has 2 units, The applicant would be required to build either two 14 by 20 structures or one 22-foot by 20-foot structure. The applicant has told staff that prior to the demolition of the garage, there were problems with break-ins, vandalism, and unauthorized sheltering. The applicant has also stated that they believe reconstructing a detached garage would impose costs that exceed the benefit of the structure. In a similar variance request, a 3-year temporary variance was granted in 2021 at 258 Western Avenue to the requirement to rebuild a demolished detached garage. It took a court order after that expired to get the garage permit pulled. Criteria number 1, lack of reasonable return. There would not appear to be a lack of reasonable return as the owner could build a new garage as required by the zoning ordinance. 2, uniqueness. There would not appear to be a uniqueness to the request as other houses in the area have been required to build a garage. 3, public consideration. Approval of the variance would appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area, as not having a garage would lead to multiple cars being parked on the lot. Therefore, staff recommends that the request by Greenfield Investment LLC for a variance to allow for the demolition of an accessory structure without a replacement structure in the R4 Multiple Residence District located at 918 and 920 West 4th Street be denied for the following reasons. 1, there would not appear to be uniqueness to the request, as other homes have been recently built in that area by Habitat and they have all had garages built. And 2, approval of the variance would appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area, as not having a garage would lead to multiple cars being parked on the lot.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
How did this come to our attention?
It came to our attention when I believe they were told that they needed to get a demolition permit for the garage after it had already been demolished. It happens occasionally. When they came to try and get that demo permit, that's when we noticed this, and kind of when the planning department learned about it.
Okay. An after the fact thing.
Yeah.
Do we have pictures of this property before demo? That shows the garage? Because right now, there's nothing there, it's just,
Yeah, I didn't have any, did I? I looked up,
okay,
tried to find pictures, but
okay.
I don't know if staff ever gets record of this, but I was curious, they talk about this, the garage is private property, right? So it talks about this being a regularly site of folks breaking in, vandalism, or unauthorized sheltering. That's like the property owner's job to secure the garage and make sure those things aren't happening. But curious, has that been, I mean, does the staff have any like report of that being the case? Do they report that over the,
we have not heard of any reports, so,
okay.
yeah.
Other questions for staff? All right, would you like to speak? Yes, please. State your name and address.
My name is Akeem Abujade. Address is 4505 Wild Rose Court, Cedar Falls, Iowa 50613. So I want to give a background to the property. It was purchased last year, and we had all the garages that were closed, but the tenants were parking outside the garage. They never parked in. So over time, whenever we went there or I went there, I noticed someone broke in. We put it, we close it down, we keep it safe. But the last time we went, I went there, I saw a mattress in there. I saw an open stove with gas in there. I saw like a little refrigerator because the garage has like a light in there, and which, seen as a, fire hazard. So I believe it was 2 months ago, I got a notification I needed to fix the siding and the roof. So I brought in a construction, company, a guy to come and fix it. He's licensed, by the way. So in looking into it, we noticed the structure was falling on the inside from, I don't know what breaking the walls in there. They were deteriorating. So and I decided maybe we just need to demolish this to avoid any issues, especially with the churches. You have kids running in and out, but I've not been able to, find the displaced individual or individuals living in there. I just come in and I'll see clothes in there. I'll see beds, I'll see plastics, everything. So I'm always cleaning up whatever is inside there. So I didn't know, like permit for demolition is required. So I just spoke to the contractor because I assume he knows what he needs to do because he has done some projects for me on other properties in Waterloo, which he got permits. So not until I saw like a notification. So the tenant called me and said, hey, someone came from the city. And that very day, I came down here, to kind of settle the permit. Then from there, I ended up with the planning office. We're told, okay, based on the ordinances, zoning laws, you have to build a, garage. However, you can apply for variance, assuming you can build one. So that was what happened. I wrote a letter requesting for variance. Hopefully, I could get one, even if it's a temporary. Because even to, if you notice the car, you see a vehicle, there's one of my tenants. They've all packed outside right now. They've always parked outside the garage prior to demolition. They never parked inside. So I'm assuming because one of my tenants is a vet, so that's why it's probably parking outside because of, I'm not sure if it's disabled for disability reasons, but he has difficult walking sometimes, so he parked outside. Then with the other tenant, the other tenant department, it's been empty since December. So I've been trying to get a tenant in there as well. So even if you notice there's an empty lot over there, people are constantly throwing stuff in there because, it's part of the building. It's a separate lot, but when we purchased, I thought it was just a yard. Later, I now realize, oh my God, so I actually came here trying to ask if you're going to build a property on there, what are the requirements? So that's the reason why it was demolished. Not until we got here, we're told, oh, you're supposed to get a permit. So I called the contractor, came over so we could make that payment. Then we're told, oh no, you have to build a new one. And that's why I'm here today. Once I got the email from the gentleman, from one of the staff members that sent this to me about, maybe the most likely it's going to be denied. So I'm hoping the committee could give me variance for this non-structural garage on that property. Because you have a church building on both sides. So, and all other properties, they sort of have fences and they have their parking lots in there. So, unfortunately, I don't have the prior picture here to show what it looked like prior to demolition.
Okay, I have a few questions.
Yes, sir.
You actually own this vacant lot next to
Yes, sir.
these properties that we're talking about?
Yep, yep.
So you have two lots
Yes.
that you own? Are there any police reports about
no.
the damage or entries
Oh,
to this
oh, no.
garage?
Oh, no. Because the thing is, the way the garage was, was just closed down, was even difficult to open. Not until I came one day, then I noticed it was open. Actually, one of the church members said, oh, we see some displaced individuals. I don't like using the word homeless. They come in and out, staying in there. Then I went in, I saw all the mattresses. Oh, sorry. All the tools they have in there.
Okay, so no police reports?
No, nothing,
Okay.
nothing of such.
The condition of the garage at that time, you mentioned that your renters did not park in the garage
They're always parking outside.
because of the condition of the garage?
I don't-
Could they park in there?
I never asked them because they were just, we had
No,
to.
I'm asking you about the condition of the garage.
Mm,
Were they able to park in there, or was the garage such that they couldn't park in there?
I think because it was closed, because the previous owner never told me anything, we just saw it, okay, it was a guard that parking outside, and we bought it as is, like whatever, you're going to inherit whatever's in there. So then I would assume they just didn't want to park inside, or it was not suitable for them to park into the garage because it was closed. It was just, you could barely pull it up. So
Well, then that explains why they probably didn't park in the garage.
So-
As the property owner, it was your responsibility to make that garage functional so they could park in there.
Yeah, that,
Okay, thank you.
okay.
I don't know, it's what he texted me.
I mean, it previously shown.
Go ahead.
I think my questions will relate to, I think similar to that, but also some of the provisions to take to make sure that it's safe for tenants. I think, one of the benefits of having tenants would be they can tell you if there's somebody going in and out of the garage, but also securing that area once you got that complaint. I think secondarily, I think as a property owner, right, you can never rely on contractors to tell you what you have to know, unfortunately. I think in this circumstance, right, doing the due diligence ahead of time, if you thought that was an issue, you would have known you had to rebuild it, and then you could have made an informed decision as to what you would have to do. I think that, though, given the scenario, for me, it's difficult to lean towards giving a variance because I believe there's some prerequisite steps that maybe weren't taken. I think as a property owner in the future, it may be beneficial for the tenants to have a garage, especially given the weather that we have here in Iowa, especially in the wintertime. And then not knowing if their inability to park in the garage was because it was not functional or it was a preference of theirs. I think as a property owner, right, that's one thing you may want to explore with your tenants. Because they probably pay to access the garage. It's probably part of what they're paying for in their rent. And so that's something to be mindful for. So for me, it's really difficult to lean towards granting a variance given some of that information.
I think if you pay attention to what's going on in that neighborhood, especially with Habitat for Humanity, they're flipping that neighborhood around. They're really bringing it back. And a lot of their properties are pretty impressive, very impressive, actually. So you could probably take a page from their game and get your property up to those standards.
I have a question for Mr. Schrader.
Who's gone?
Oh, he's gone?
There's an empty seat there.
Oh my God, I didn't notice he left. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
The new code about practical difficulties, I'm going to connect this to page 54 in our document about the uniqueness of the property, and that is this true? The lot is a rear yard through lot accessed only via a narrow alley flanked on both sides by active churches
Yeah.
That's true.
and multi-unit apartment buildings. And so if the garage was built, then it would offer, and functional, it would offer protection
Yes.
from that. Okay. I just didn't want to get into this practical difficulties thing.
Well, and that is what we're still researching, because from it sounds like that only deals with setbacks, or mostly setbacks.
Area, dimensional, and other numerical justice.
Exactly.
Legislation.
Yeah. So, I mean, this would be one of the few times that probably will not apply.
Okay.
There's very few that come up here that will not apply. This is one of them.
Okay, good. All righty. All right. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
That's about it.
Thank you. Other questions? All right. Chair will entertain a motion on this application.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to deny the request by Greenfield Investment LLC for a variance to allow for the demolition of an accessory structure without a replacement structure in the R4 Multiple Residence District located at 918 and 920 West 4th Street for the following reasons. Number one, there would not appear to be a uniqueness to the request, as other homes have been recently built in the area by Habitat, and they have all had garages built. Number two, approval of the variance would appear to have a negative impact on the surrounding area, as not having a garage would lead to multiple cars being parked on the lot.
A second?
Oh, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
So it appears this is not going to pass, and he's got a couple of choices: either build two different, one structure or another.
Right.
So you folks are gonna follow that up?
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right, okay.
With the building permit.
Yeah.
And I think just from what we've seen in the neighborhood, I think the hope is that through investing in that garage, you'll see the benefit and your value of your property going forward too, and your ability to attract tenants in that other section, which would help mitigate some of those issues that you've been having with your garage. So I wish you the best with that, but I think we do gotta make sure that we're doing our due diligence going forward.
All right. All those in favor of the motion to deny the application for Greenfield Investment LLC for a variance?
Aye.
Aye. Motion denied.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. We have a discussion item, and that deals with appointing a vice chair for when I'm gone for August and September, providing the world doesn't blow up between
So,
then.
yeah, next month we'll have it, so I know one of you are just gonna jump at the opportunity to be the vice chair, while Mr. Beckman serves as a temporary chairperson. So just be prepared.
Prepared, yes, it's notice.
Yes. Unless you can bribe Craig really.
You gonna put on notice, or what you say?
Yeah, you're on notice, guys, yeah.
Okay,
Anything else we need to discuss? Yes,
go
sir.
along with that, gentlemen. As we just said, Jerry's gonna be gone, August and September. So it's gonna be incumbent on us to be here so that we can take care of business. So, does anybody know right now whether you have any problems making the August 26th or the September 23rd meeting? So if you don't have any known problems at this point, you're gonna need to kind of try to make your schedules, adjust your schedules so that we have enough people here to take care of business. You've been given notice. How's that?
All right, anything else? All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and the time is 5:07.
5:07.
5:07.